So many of you have heard me talk about Berberine as being one of my favorite supplements, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into this particular supplement and what it can do and maybe how it can benefit you. So Berberine is a compound. It's from the Oregon grapefruit, and there's something else, the barberry plant. And it was used way back in Chinese traditional medicine. It was actually used as an antioxidant, well, an antibiotic, because it's a potent antioxidant. So that's one of the benefits of it. And just as a side note, I like using supplements that have multiple benefits to them. So yes, Berberine has crazy medical literature on its efficacy with type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. So it's going to help you lose weight. And if you have a thyroid problem, and you probably do if you're listening to me, you are struggling with weight. So this is going to be a game changer for you. And you can probably hear the excitement in my voice. The latest introduction, the latest member of the family to the Fixxr line is Metabolism Fixxr. And this, oh my God, I formulated this just for all my people out there that need to lose weight, that need help in the weight loss department, that can't lose weight no matter what they do, that feel like they have a slow metabolism, and that might be thinking of trying all those peptides out there, you know, the Beverly Hills soccer mom drug of choice for weight loss peptides. Or even if you're on them already and you're like, man, these are really expensive and I'm still not losing weight, add in Metabolism Fixxr. Here's what I did. I took the power of T2, which increases your basal metabolic rate while you are sitting there watching Netflix. You're burning fat while you're watching Netflix. I combined it with a very unique patented ingredient called Suppressa. Suppressa has multiple clinical trials backing its efficacy in reducing your appetite, decreasing snacking, and providing way more control over your food intake. It is amazing. We also see improved emotional well-being, just decreased food cravings all around, reduced hunger, and weight management. Add on top of that, we have green tea extract, we have purple forest purple tea extract, both of which affect the metabolism in a very positive way without the jitters of normal fat burning supplements out there from the 1980s and 90s, right? The ones that made you feel like you're having a heart attack. You will not have that in any of my supplements, Thyroid Fixxr or Metabolism Fixxr. But Metabolism Fixxr, ooh, yeah, we kicked it up a notch. It is in powder form, so you can drink it through your day. It's going to flavor your water. We got orange crush and refreshing citrus. I love them both. It is going to keep you under control all day long. So you throw a couple scoops in your water bottle in the morning, throw a scoop or two in your water bottle throughout the day. You will have fat burning and appetite control the entire day for what? An eighth of a price of the peptides? Oh my God, you can't go wrong. So grab some Metabolism Fixxr today. Please let me know how you do on it. I am super excited for you. Super excited. So oftentimes with hypothyroidism, we see insulin resistance tied to it. So Berberine is going to help you there. It also helps with IBS. So there is very strong medical literature that it is great for irritable bowel syndrome. And then add on top of that, it's a potent antioxidant too. So it builds your immune system and kind of works as a antibiotic without the bad antibiotic side effects like MRSA, like getting used to the antibiotic and then killing off all the good bacteria. So we actually use Berberine because it's used for IBS. We also use Berberine in gut healing protocols. So sometimes we'll pair up Berberine with collagen, maybe GI Revive, L-glutamine, Tegracell colostrum, all of those kind of components. And then yes, we use probiotics here and there, prebiotics, probiotics, but we'll use Berberine in an IBS protocol or gut healing protocol. Those are like the little side benefits. Now let's get to the big, big benefit of it. Insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So little side note with my own story. Many of you know, because I'm open about it, that I have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And when you have hypothyroidism, many times you see PCOS tied to it. So ladies, if you have hypo, if you have Hashi, sometimes your cycles are a mess. You're skipping them. You have acne, you have weight gain. And not only is that kind of getting messed up from your thyroid not being optimized, but it's also, it can affect your insulin, and you can have PCOS as well, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So with PCOS, we see insulin resistance. And with insulin resistance comes weight gain. So insulin resistance, another name for it is prediabetes. You can have this independent of PCOS as well. You can just be insulin resistant. So when we're looking at your glucose in functional medicine, we like that glucose below an 86. When we're looking at your hemoglobin A1C, we like that around like a 5, 5.1. We like insulin below a 6. So when you're testing fasting insulin, which that's a test you have to get from your doctor, glucose you can test with a little glucometer that you pick up at Walmart. But with insulin, you have to get that as a blood test ordered by your physician or practitioner that you're working with. And we like that below a 6. So anything above those values I just gave you is indicative of insulin resistance. When you are insulin resistant, you are resistant to insulin's effect on the cell, meaning it can't get in to do its job. It can't push nutrients into the cell. And too much insulin is a bad scenario, just bad. It's going to set you up for weight gain. I always say the fastest way to age is keep your insulin levels high. So yeah, keep being insulin resistant. Don't do anything about it. And don't know your numbers or where you're at, and then wonder why you are getting wrinkles sooner and you're getting early onset dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer. All those age-related diseases are associated with high insulin levels. So we want to keep the insulin down for so many different reasons. But when we're talking about insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, that insulin is driving up your hemoglobin A1C. You will end up with high fasting insulin values, and usually we will see high glucose. Now, glucose can lie because you can be insulin resistant and have low glucose. So you might be saying, well, hey, I have this glucose of 75. Well, you probably are experiencing reactive hypoglycemia if you are struggling with weight loss and you have low glucose. We really want to test the fasting insulin and the A1C. And what Berberine does is it comes in and brings those down. So it creates, instead of going on this roller coaster of up and down glucose levels and these high A1C levels, which means that A1C is a 3-month snapshot. It doesn't lie. It means you've been riding high glucose levels for the last 3 months. So instead of you being on this crazy roller coaster, Berberine comes in and makes like a wave-like pattern. So you don't have really big highs and you don't have really big lows where you're hangry and tired. You're just right. You're just kind of floating along, good energy. You're able to tap into your own fat stores for fuel. Just makes for an awesome scenario. And it helps your gut, and it's a good antioxidant. Okay, so let me tell you a story. First, I'm going to start with me, and then I will tell you about a patient. So for myself, like I said, PCOS on metformin. So I started using Berberine maybe like 4 years ago, and I wanted to do a test on myself first because I did not want to start recommending this to patients and then having it not work if they're going off their metformin. So I wanted to test it on myself first. So I went off my metformin. I started on Berberine. Metformin is usually 500 milligrams a day, 3 times a day. And for Berberine, the medical literature says around 1,200 milligrams a day. So I take the 400 milligram capsule, Berberine Synergy by Designs for Health. It's paired up with alpha lipoic acid. I take that 3 times a day. So it was just kind of replacing one metformin for one Berberine. And I will take it with food. I try to, even if I don't eat a big breakfast, I'll do a handful of nuts, a tablespoon of coconut oil or almond butter or something like that. And I took it for a while, and I knew if this isn't going to work, I'm gaining weight. because my insulin's going to go through the roof. I don't even need to look at lab values. I would know on myself whether or not this was working or not. And sure enough, it worked. I did not gain weight. It was an easy transition. And in fact, with many of you who say, well, I can't take metformin, most of you can take berberine. Now, there's a handful. There's about 20% of the population that cannot take berberine. You get the loose stools, you get a little bit of nausea. But there's 70% of the population that can't take metformin because you get the loose stools and you get the nausea. So your chances are much lower of having any kind of GI side effects from berberine as opposed to metformin. So really easy transition, metformin to berberine, and it worked. There are side effects with metformin. I realize that. And one of the recent studies that are out says that metformin can increase your risk of cancer. So if you're like me and you have cancer in your family, you probably want to make that transition, because it's kind of like, okay, do we roll the dice and risk having maybe a week or two of loose stools with berberine, or do we take the metformin and probably have loose stools and increase our risk of cancer? That's kind of a no-brainer. So that's my story, easy transition. My patient's story, he called me after leaving the hospital being diagnosed as an insulin-dependent diabetic, type 2 diabetic. So he entered the hospital with symptoms that he knew were indicative of type 2 diabetes because he had it in his family. He had seen some of his family members go through these very symptoms, and he was smart enough to go to Walmart and buy a glucometer and test his blood sugar, and it was over 600. So he checked himself into the hospital. At that time, they ran a bunch of tests. They released him from the hospital saying, you're basically an insulin-dependent type 2 diabetic. Right here. There was no climb up to it. There was no, you're type 2 and then you became insulin dependent over time. He was insulin dependent. So that's when he called me. He said, I absolutely do not want to be on insulin for the rest of my life. I know what it does to the body. It is not good for the body. Using insulin for a type 2 diabetic, I mean, you're creating a vicious cycle. Insulin makes you fat. Fat cells, the heavier you are, the more insulin resistant you will be. So the more type 2 diabetic you'll become. So the higher your A1C will go and the higher your fasting insulin will be and the higher your fasting glucose numbers will be. So then we feed you more insulin to try to bring that down, but then there's excess insulin. So you're in a fat storage mode. It's just an ugly cycle. If you can get off insulin, please get off insulin. Now type 1s, no, you can't. But if you're a type 2, this story might give you some hope. So he called me. He said, I do not want to be on insulin the rest of my life. I said, all right, well, you got to give me some time. So he was on insulin and he was on metformin, and we actually paired up berberine in addition to changes with his diet. We paired up berberine with his metformin because medical literature shows metformin and berberine work really, really well together. So if you are a full-blown A1C of 13.9 fasting glucose in the 600s diabetic, then you might want to pair up the metformin and the berberine. Might be a good idea. So we paired that up. Within 6 weeks, his A1C went from a 13.9 to an 8.4, and he was able to get off of his insulin. So he discontinued insulin as a medication. He kept in the metformin, kept doing the dietary changes, no exercise due to an injury. So it was metformin, berberine, dietary changes. That's it. Then in 6 months, now how many of you have been diabetic for years? Can you just, kind of raise your hand? I can't see you, but raise your hand. Diabetic for many, many years. In 6 months, he was no longer diabetic. His A1C went from a 13.9 to a 5.4. He lost a ton of weight. I want to say it was close to 100 pounds. He's probably over that by now. And his glucose numbers, I got to see them come down week after week because he would keep track of his glucose readings, his glucometer readings on a daily basis. And I saw them go from the 600s And then when we hit that 6-week mark where we took him off the insulin, he was hanging around and still in the 200s. And then it would go in the I'd be seeing like 180, 150, 120. And then eventually we were getting 90s and 80s for fasting. So it was just such a beautiful sight for me to see, as for him too, as he was losing weight and feeling better. But Berberine came in and really helped that process along. It really helped him to bring down the insulin, bring down his glucose so his body could tap into his own fat stores for fuel and help him to lose weight in this whole process of basically reversing his health condition and getting healthy again. So that is why I am such a fan of Berberine. I did write a paper on him. It was a case study that got published with a colleague of mine. I can always post a link to that too in the show notes if you're a science nerd and want to read about it. And if you are a science nerd and want to research Berberine a little bit, go to Google Scholar, go to PubMed, type in Berberine and insulin resistance, Berberine and type 2 diabetes, and you will find a whole host of papers that show the beneficial effects of Berberine on those conditions. Now, of course, you can also look at Berberine and IBS. That's a really good one to look up too if you're having some gut issues. So my favorite is Berberine Synergy by Designs for Health. That's what I use on my patient to reverse his diabetes. It is just simply phenomenal. And I highly recommend it for any of you who are struggling to lose weight. Maybe we're working on optimizing your thyroid a little bit, but you're still struggling over here because you have that double whammy that I always talk about. You have that insulin resistance, you're borderline diabetic, and you're fixing the thyroid over here, but you're not fixing this part over here. And you have to do both together. It has to be a both and situation. So you hit your metabolism with, again, a 1-2 punch. So we're actually working on bringing that glucose and insulin back into a better balance, a nice wave-like pattern, and then we're optimizing your thyroid over here. Now listen, even if you don't have a thyroid problem, my patient that I just told you about did not have a thyroid problem at all. We checked it. Totally fine. His issue was type 2 diabetes. His issue was the food choices that he was making as he was working on the road. And by the way, he did these dietary changes while traveling. Absolutely amazing. Mad kudos to him while traveling. We all complain about doing it. We're in our homes. He made the right food choices while traveling because it was important to him. It was of utmost importance to him to not be an insulin-dependent diabetic. He did not want to go down the route that he saw so many of his family members go down. So he made the necessary choices and changes and investments. He wanted to see his life change. So I ask you, how about a $34 supplement that you know absolutely works and can not only protect you from those age-related diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and cancer, but can also help you now, right now, actually be able to lose weight, to balance that insulin and glucose, to give you better numbers, and to allow your body to tap into its fat stores for fuel. Because when you're riding high insulin all the time, you are in a fat storage mode. You cannot burn fat in the presence of insulin at all. Insulin has to be low in order for your body to burn fat. If insulin is high, the body cannot shrink a fat cell. Fat cells love insulin. It's like you give fat cells insulin and they're happy and they're growing and they're producing more fat cells. It's like a fat cell's happy day. So if you want your fat cells to shrink, if you want some of them to go away, then you got to bring down your insulin so your body can burn that for fuel. Use Berberine. Let me know how it goes. So we will put in the show notes, we will put the link to Berberine Synergy by Designs for Health and a 20% off code. If you haven't ordered from Designs for Health before, you can use this code. Now, they always give you free shipping. Always give you free shipping. And just as a last parting word, do not buy your supplements on Amazon. So I do have I recommend watching this on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. I have a video called, it's the hypothyroidism mistake. I think it's number 3, not knowing where your supplements come from. And in there, I actually show you a clip from a documentary where it's a big, long documentary, but the maker of the documentary goes out and he gets immigrant workers and he brings them back to his house just for the purpose of showing you how easy it is to counterfeit supplements on Amazon. So he buys rice bran flour and inositol and I think baby laxative or something like that, all powdered form. And he buys the empty capsules and he gives these guys, sits them at the kitchen table. He's like, here, you're going to fill up these capsules. And they're filling them up, puts them in the bottle, counts out 60, puts them in the bottle. He has a professional label machine. He has a sealing machine, for the cap. It all looks legit. And he turns and he shows the camera. He goes, this is a $60 bottle worth $60 on Amazon that I can sell. It cost me like $2 to make. And it's not even real. Not even real. But he can sell it. So don't buy your supplements on Amazon, because the other thing that Designs for Health let us know people are doing is actually buying the Designs for Health products, using them themselves, and then doing that very thing of getting capsules, filling them up with what appears to be a powdered substance, putting them back in the bottle, sealing it up professionally, and then reselling the bottle as Designs for Health products. So don't buy your supplements on Amazon. Use the link below, use the discount code. I promise you it'll be worth it. If you have any questions about Berberine, reach out to me because it's one of my faves. Thank you so much for listening to the Thyroid Fixx podcast. As always, please share this with anyone that you know that needs this information. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there and in your life who do. And if you would please take a moment to write a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be much appreciated. I read all of them. Also, please remember that anything that you hear on this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat. So you always want to check with your doctor about any advice given that you hear on this podcast. And if you would like to book a discovery call, a free discovery call, to go over everything that's going on with you and to go over how I can help you, please go to my website at amiehornaman.com. The link is always in the show notes. And click on book a call. Choose a time and a day that's right for you. And we will see how we can help you. Thanks for listening.